I often come up here into the hills of Cheshire in the northwest of England where I live, just to clear my head and maybe come up with some new ideas. And on this particular walk, it struck me that I'm nearly 25 years now self-employed, and about 50-50 of that time was in the golf industry initially, and latterly in the field of communication skills training, specifically storytelling in the business world, and with about 3 or 4 years in the middle of crossover when I more or less did both. And an interesting thing is I often get asked, have you written a book about your work now in communication skills? And oddly enough, I haven't. I've written lots of blogs, I've recorded many podcasts, but I've never written a book. But I have written a book about sport, and much of it was to do with golf, which is my sport. So what I wanted to do in this clip is find specifically three linkages between what we can apply and learn from golf and why it's relevant in other walks of life, like business, for example. And those three things are, first of all, the importance of identifying the right problem. Secondly, the notion of a second chance. And thirdly, the fact that it's the small things that really matter. So let's consider the first one, finding the right problem to fix. I think I read somewhere that Einstein suggested that we spend a much greater proportion of our time identifying the right problem as opposed to the solution. Because obviously we tend to focus on the thing that will fix it without actually identifying what it is properly or accurately. And certainly that applies in something like golf. So for example, if your putting appears to be poor, and if you look at your statistics, you're taking lots of putts, you think to yourself, well, I need to work on my putting. But actually that might not be the problem, because perhaps your iron play, your approach play to the green is poor, your ball striking is poor, or maybe you're not taking enough club to get you up to the pin. So you're leaving the ball a long way from the hole all the time, typically at the front of the green, and the pin may be in the middle or at the back, and you've got a long putt, and you'll end up 3 or maybe 4 putting. So the fault there is not actually the putting, it's probably more the iron play and the club selection. And similarly in my line of work now, or in a field like consulting, a lot of the time a client will say, well, we want this kind of training, or we want this sort of problem fixing. And they haven't actually identified the right problem, they've identified a symptom rather than the deeper cause. So I think it's important that we do a little bit of a slightly deeper analysis than a very surface thing, and identify the thing that we actually need to be working on before we set about the fix. Well, what about this idea of the second chance? What do I mean by this? Well, I think in life generally we're very fearful of making mistakes. We hate to get things wrong, and if on a round of golf we start off really badly, we tend to lose our head a little bit, and we think, oh, this is going to be terrible, this is awful, how on earth can I sort of carry on in this vein? But actually the round of golf is 18 holes, and if you mess the first one up or the first couple of holes, there's plenty of time to steady the ship and maybe recover a little bit with 1 or 2 birdies. So don't panic. Stay in for the long term rather than thinking of the short term issue. And I think similarly in something like the world of work, where we worry about making mistakes, with presenting, we're thinking, oh, the last time I presented it was awful. Well, there is time to redeem yourself. You'll always get a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance to have another go and right the things that you got wrong last time. By the way, check out a very interesting book that's out at the moment by Amy Edmondson called The Right Kind of Wrong. And it's a really interesting exploration of how we look at failure. And the third thing I want to mention is the importance of the small things. And if we look at the game of golf, a lot of people go to the driving range. They'll hire a bucket of balls, they'll whack them down the field with the driver, and their focus, their obsession is on distance. And often they have these sort of analyses, these TrackMan computers which analyse how far you've hit the ball, your club head speed, the ball speed and so forth. It's all about distance. But the trouble with that is that the golf game isn't just about hitting it a long way. it's about getting the ball in the hole efficiently in the least number of shots. And the chances are that you'll improve your scores much more rapidly if you improve your short game. The putting, the chipping, the bunker play, the small stuff that happens often, the little and often stuff. And similarly in the world of work, you may have had a boss in the past that likes to make a big gesture. Maybe one time a year they'll buy, they'll pay for a big Christmas party as a way of maybe buying the employee's loyalty. But actually a much better strategy is for them to take an interest in their staff, is to ask them little and often, how are you getting on? How was your daughter's graduation ceremony? How are you getting on with that new puppy that you got at Christmas time? Just knowing your individual employees well means the world to them, because it shows that you care rather than making a single one-time gesture at one point in the year. I hope you liked those comparisons between the world of sport, or specifically golf, which is really the only sport I know much about, and the world of business. I think there is so much to learn from a field which apparently seems unrelated to yours. It's one of the reasons why metaphors work so well. So I hope you found some value in this, and that maybe you'll apply some of these principles, whether it's on the golf course or elsewhere.